for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you. We are now going to introduce guests. So if you brought a guest, if you and your guest will please stand so we can make sure your guest is introduced. And Mr. Devin's going to pass the mic around.
Here you are.
This is my husband, Walt, and I think he's going to be coming into the club soon. He's starting today.
That is so exciting. Welcome, Reverend Markham.
Any others?
Anyone else? So exciting. Thank you, Devin.
Right here, okay.
It's perfect. And now Kyle Marmillion is going to tell us who today's PCR Marketplace advertiser is. Come on up, Mr. Kyle.
Awesome. Good. Good to see everybody. All right, so today's marketplace advertiser is Chris CLAUSEN with CNC Home Care. They provide licensed home care support for the activities of daily living. Whether at home, hospital, or in a retirement community, they provide care for anyone in need of assistance in maintaining an independent lifestyle. Chris has been involved in geriatric care and case management for 26 years. His company answers the phone live 24 hours a day and does not use a third-party service to answer calls. He has been a member of this club since 1995, is a multiple Paul Harris Fellow, multiple Frank Monroe Fellow, and received the Club Service Award in 2012. He has had many humbling experiences, including officiating a friend's funeral that was one of the most humbling of experiences for him. The name of his company is CNC Home Care, and they've been in Dallas community since 1994. If you or anyone you know needs care support for activities of daily living, please give Chris a call. And please join me in thanking Chris for today's PCR Marketplace advertiser.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, please chat with Chris. He is really the long-term care solutions expert. And now our Greg Pape is going to tell us about the Rotary Foundation and some great recipients. Come on up, Mr. Greg.
Thank you, President Happy. For the benefit of our guests and the new members, EREY, donate $100 or more to the Rotary International Foundation. To date, we have $22,800 that have been contributed since July 1, 2021. As of today, January 14th, making up 54 contributors. Remember, the Rotary Foundation is a nonprofit corporation. When you make a donation to the Rotary Foundation, you're helping Rotary members make a difference in the lives of millions of people around the world. We help to promote peace, prevent disease, support education, bolster economic development, and provide clean water and sanitation. Every dollar you contribute gives us, you individually, a Rotary Foundation point. And you can use that point to recognize others when you get to 1,000 points with a Rotary Foundation Fellow recognition. That helps to promote Rotary, and it also helps to recognize your support of the foundation. I'd like to ask two individuals that I see are in the room, Jeff McNaughton. That was a surprise, wasn't it? And Patsy Watson. come on up, because ladies first, Jeff, so come on up, though. Patsy?
Yes.
You are just an awesome lady, and you're a third level foundation contributor.
All right.
So you have 2 sapphires on that pen, Rotary Foundation pen. And hang on while we're up here. Jeff, you are a second level foundation contributor, 1 sapphire in your foundation pen, and we thank you for that. And Holly, you can take a photo of 3 of us? Yes, sir. Oh, awesome.
All right.
Dallas Morning News? Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, Patsy. Thanks, Happy.
Great work, Greg. We're now going to have Happy Bucks. So this is our time to share our happy news, something that we're really excited about. And you can share whatever dollar denomination that you feel comfortable with, $1, $5, $10, $100. And so tell us something that you're really happy about this week. And may I have someone pass the mic? We have our Sergeant at Arms is going to take the Happy Bucks around.
Tom Swift.
So in spite of historical precedent, I am optimistic about the Dallas Cowboys playoffs run. I will put bucks in here every week as long as we're in the playoffs. So hopefully that's 4 weeks, right?
It's exciting. Way to go, Tom.
Let's do this.
Woo!
Okay, since Tom started it, I am happy that I'm going to be at the stadium on Sunday with over 1,000 local 49er fans
That's fantastic.
having a huge tailgate, and I hear that on all the Cowboys forums they're begging Cowboys fans not to sell tickets to 49ers fans because we actually had more fans in the stadium last week in LA than the LA team did.
Wow.
So here's my happy bucks to the red out. for
Very
Sunday.
fun. I love it. Anyone else? Jeff over here. Absolutely.
So real quick, some of you may have seen the media coverage that we helped generate covering one of our charities, one of our nonprofit organizations, Bonton Farms. And in particular, right before Christmas, there was some media coverage, newspaper and television, of one of the guys who works there, Darius Lee, L-E-E. So he's a devoted staff member, runs the clinic, in desperate need of a kidney. He's been on the dialysis for more than 10 years, been on the list, never could find a donor. Part of it's because he has a very rare blood type. Well, our club generated some media coverage about his plight and how nice it would be if a donor would come forward after all this time that might be a match. Well, lo and behold, a donor was found for Darius Lee, a match. I think it's A negative is his blood type, which apparently is very rare. Anyway, he's getting the kidney he has needed all his life. It happened on Christmas Eve, and it's due in no small part to our club helping to generate some media coverage about one of our nonprofit groups. So it's a fantastic Christmas story, and hopefully happy, in the weeks and months to come, we'll have someone from Bonton come with Darius to tell us his story, right?
Yes.
That's in the works. Yeah, wonderful. Oh, so I'm putting in heavy. Where's the box?
Right here.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's great.
Thank you, Jeff. And now Ms. Holly Hollenbeck is going to come up and tell us about PCRConnect.
I would just like to add to what was just said about Bonton. Stephanie Bohan, who's a member of our club, she was particularly helpful in Darius' situation in getting the kidney. And in fact, she stayed with him in the hospital the whole time. She's an angel, and I think she should get 99% of the credit for what happened with Darius. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. All right, network, come have a drink, have some fun, get your mind off COVID. We're all immunized, right? And if you're not, stay home. Anyway, come Thursday, this coming Thursday, we're going to be at Cheesecake Factory right across the street. And you're like, Cheesecake Factory? They have an amazing happy hour, okay? They really do. So you have to get there early, before 6, because it stops at 6. But we're going to be there till 7, enjoying all the cocktails we buy before 6 on their happy hour menu. So in any case, if you'd like to join us, whether you have something to network about or not, we'd love your presence. So please spread the word and come over to Cheesecake Factory 5 to 7 next Thursday.
Thank you, Holly. I'm really looking forward to it. So now we have a number of club merch that we can buy. We have our tumbler. We're going to have an awesome new baseball cap that's going to replace the straw hat that we were wearing at the parade. Were any of y'all big fans of the hat that we wore at the parade? You just loved wearing the hat. Do you wear it outside of the 4th of July? So we're really excited about our new hat. They're arriving. They're going to be shipped January 29th, so we'll have it the first part of February. They are really beautiful. They are sweat wicking hats, and so we can wear it in the summer, and it'll still be fun. And and they're really cool hats. They're going to have our logo, and then we have the Santa hats that we can wear at any event in November and December. So love for you to buy those. You can buy them online. I'm very excited about each of those. Evan is now going to come up and tell us about our Homeless Veterans Project for January. And so Evan is the chair of the Military Appreciation Team. Our next meeting, I'm trying to get everybody added to that distribution list, and so I see some people I still need to add. Our next meeting is at Seasons 52 this Tuesday at 5 p.m. We'd love for y'all to join us. It's called the Military Appreciation Team because we do stuff for people that are currently serving and veterans. And so please join us. Come on up, Evan.
Once again, so the service project for this month is helping homeless veterans in the Dallas Homeless Veterans Services. It's a really good organization. They do a lot of good work. A lot of these veterans are homeless. They've had medical issues for 20 plus years, 30 plus years, just weren't treated. And medical care is so much better now than when they got out of Vietnam. So it's a really good organization. Some of these guys need our help. So we're going to do a lot of other veteran services related events over the next year. But with the Amazon link that I sent you guys, so it's going to be sent to your address, your home address. If you just bring the box in from Amazon, we'll take it there. The reason they did that is because Amazon was dropping it off different places. Their boxes were getting lost. So if you just bring those in, we'll take it there. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.
And now Miss Patsy Watson is going to give our membership minute. Come up, Miss Patsy.
Now I want to look around this room, and we're not quite as full as we usually are, but it is a good number of men and women in this room. Great looking group. And that's very important because I'm going to give a little bit of Rotary history, and especially for some of you newer members, you may not be aware of some of this. When I was growing up, women could not be members of Rotary. And my father was a member of this club, and all his friends would bring their sons to Rotary and introduce, because they knew they could be members at one point. He couldn't bring me because women couldn't be members, and he was always disappointed. Well, in 1989, he called me up. I was at work, and he said, "Women are now allowed in Rotary. Please come this Friday. I want to introduce you to the club." So I did, and I think I was the third woman to become a member. Karen Ferris, who's not here today, she was the first. And I think she came in just a few months ahead of me, and it was 1989, 1990. That's when we first came in. And, it's just been a really thrilling situation. And one of the things I have to say as a new member, when I joined, and there were only 3 women at that time, you have to get involved in the service projects, and that's what I did. And there were a group of us that went down to South Dallas, and we would meet with some kids down there, and we all got to know each other really well with the kids and all the adults, and I got to know the members, and it's just a fun thing to do. And some of our service projects we're not able to do right now, but soon we will. But there's still a number that we can do, and I encourage, especially the new members, to do as much of that as you can. That's how you will get to know the members. And I did always feel very welcome, even if there were just 3 women. We always felt very welcome. So thank you. I love this club, and I love everybody here. Thank you so much.
I love that. I didn't know that. And Patsy made an excellent point. I'll be sending out an email with all of the teams in our club, so you can take a look at the teams. If you're not already on a particular team, you can join it. We want to make sure that you stay fully engaged, and so you can sign up for another team, or if you change mind about a team, you can just let that team chair know. We want to make sure that you're finding some great people to meet and getting involved in great things. Now, if Van Oliver will come up, we'll present him with his blue badge. Fantastic. Come on up, man. So every new member completes this red badge list, and he did it super fast. And so way to go, Van.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Happy to be with the club and happy to join and meet everybody, and happy to be here with Pappy.
And our tallest member. Way to go, Van. So be paying attention to your emails. MAGGIANO'S has, we're not going to be able to meet here every Friday through April. So some of those meetings are going to be held at the Park City Club. We'll keep you posted on those dates, so please be sure to listen to the club meeting, watch your emails, and we'll keep you posted on that. And so there's about 4 meetings are going to be, 5 meetings in between now and May that'll be off-site. So watch your emails, listen to the messages here, and we'll get you in the right place. It's going to be lots of fun. So as you see, you know, with MAGGIANO'S, they have to write out the tickets. It's going to save us a lot of time if you'll bring cash. I didn't bring cash today, so but if you bring cash, that'll help make the process easier. They are working on getting the electronic paying system, so they are working on that for us. And we have a new general manager here that has been a real delight to work with. His dad is a Rotarian, and he used to cook lots of big things for shrimp boils, and so we're looking forward to having him visit our club in the next few months once he's settled. They just moved here in November. They're building a house in McKinney. Really nice people. We have the Mavericks game on Sunday, January 23rd. It's going to be so much fun. Please sign up online. It's at 6:30. The tickets are 24 person. We have great tickets, great price, and then I have a link to all the parking options. So just check the monitors for all of our activities. We have the great Veteran Service Project, Military Appreciation Service Project this month. We have the social. We'd love for you to participate in both of those. And we're going to be auctioning an item. Jeff has a meeting outside here, and so we'll go ahead and do the program. At the very end, we'll have an auction of this lovely table down here. So I'm so excited. We're very pleased to have you here. We have a fabulous speaker. We have Mark Wynne, and Miss Valerie Pellin is going to come up and introduce him. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Our speaker today is Mark Wynne, and if you want to talk about an overachiever, so let me go through his simple biography, because there's a longer one somewhere, I'm sure. He's Vice President, Associate Director of Research, and the Director of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas's Globalization Institute. Since joining the Dallas Fed in 1989, he has had a variety of responsibilities, advising the bank's president on national and international economic conditions prior to the meeting of the FOMC. You know, that's the meeting that decides the interest rate. Briefing the bank's board of directors on what he briefed the president on, leading the bank's international economics group. But wait, there's more. He has conducted research on the effects of fiscal policy, the drivers of the business cycle, inflation measurement, the regional impact of global shocks, the natural rate of interest, the workings of the monetary unions. His research has appeared in many of the leading peer-reviewed academic journals and the Federal Reserve publications. He co-edited with Michael Brodo the volume entitled The Federal Reserve's Role in the Global Economy, a Historical Perspective, published in 2016. He has also taught at the University College Dublin, the University of Rochester, SMU, and the University of Texas at Dallas. He is a member of the American Economic Association, the European Economic Association, the Econometric Society, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Dallas Committee on Foreign Relations. There's still more, wait. He earned first-class honors, BA and MA degrees from the National University of Ireland, University College, Dublin, and holds an MA and PhD degrees in economics from the University of Rochester. So please welcome our speaker. As I said, he's an overachiever.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. I sure hope I can live up to that. Just start my timer here. I'm going to go through a few slides here. Before I start, let me just say that everything I say is a personal opinion and should not be interpreted as an official position of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas or the Federal Reserve System. Let me just quickly go through a couple of introductory comments about the structure of the Fed. I don't know how familiar you are with our organization. So the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve System, consists of a board of governors in Washington, D.C., and 12 regional reserve banks, of which one is here in Dallas. We're not actually a branch of the Washington office. We're an independent legal entity. We ourselves have branches in Houston, San Antonio, and El Paso. The mandate of the Fed is to pursue price stability and maximum sustainable employment. And the group that actually does this is the Federal Open Market Committee, which is the key policy-making group within the Federal Reserve System. There are many, many policy-making groups within the system, but the FOMC is the key one. It meets 8 times a year, has 8 scheduled meetings every year. There will be one the week after next, and there will be presumably several important decisions taken at that meeting. That committee consists of the 7 governors who are in Washington and 5 of the 12 Reserve Bank presidents. So even though the president of the Dallas Fed does not get to vote at every FOMC meeting, he or she gets to vote every 3rd year. There's a cycle that's been set up, a rotational system of votes. But the president of the Dallas Fed, like the president of the San Francisco Fed, gets to participate in every meeting and have an input into the decisions that are made. The way we define our mandate of price stability is inflation around 2%. And obviously, inflation is not currently around 2%. And this is going to be the big issue that we're going to be dealing with over the next several meetings to try to get inflation back towards where we think we would like it to be. The last time I spoke to this group was actually in January of 2017, and the world looked a little bit different 5 years ago. I talked a lot about the fundamental drivers of long-run prosperity back then, and I'm going to do that again this time around just to remind you of some of these very important secular trends that it's easy to lose sight of when you're in the midst of a pretty dramatic crisis. Back then, we were expecting the global economy to grow about 3.5%, and one of the interesting things we were dealing with was the fact that India was expected to grow faster than China. As those of you who pay attention to international economic affairs know, China has grown at an extraordinary pace over the past 2-3 decades. And whether it's the number 2 or number 1 economy in the world, we can debate. The point is China is big, and problems in China matter for the rest of the world, and will increasingly matter for the rest of the world going forward. Monetary policy was, we'd been in this situation where interest rates had been really, really low. We just begun to gradually raise them in December 2015. We'd bumped them up a little bit in 2016, and then we're on track to raise them further in 2017. And we eventually got to, I think, a rate of about 2.5% until the COVID crisis hit. One of the things I talked about the risks, I looked at China, Europe, and so on. One of the things I did not include as a risk back then were so-called black swan events. And what I've learned over the past 2 years is that you should always include black swan events in your listing of risks, because what we've just gone through is the mother of all black swan events. People thought that there was a likelihood of a global pandemic given what had happened 100 years ago. But this really took us all, I think, by surprise. So what was the SARS-CoV shock? It's basically a once-in-a-century health shock. Started off in China, as we all know, spread pretty rapidly, was classified as a pandemic in the end of January of 2020. If you think back to 2020, what was going on, countries around the world were shutting down, either voluntarily or with government-imposed mandates at rates that were literally without precedent in economic history. Those shutdowns actually only lasted, the most draconian shutdowns only lasted about a month or two. We had the sharpest and shortest recession in US history in 2020. And since May of 2020, we've been in recovery mode. We still have not gotten back to exactly where we would like to be, but it's a really, really dramatic drop and then rebound in economic activity, both here and around the rest of the world. The way the FOMC has characterized its stance of policy is they routinely include a statement in their press release that the path of the economy continues to depend on the course of the virus. Right now we're going through yet another surge in cases, as you know, driven by this Omicron variant. It's no longer concentrated in Europe as it was late last year. It's spreading globally. At the moment, about 6,000 people plus are dying every day from COVID still. It's pretty dramatic. We in the United States, I think we're approaching 800,000 new cases a day, about 1,600 deaths a day. So this is all still a pretty serious situation. What the good news seems to be is that this Omicron variant appears to be highly transmissible but less lethal. Even a less lethal variant of a disease that affects a lot of people can really tax the healthcare system. This is a picture I took from the Financial Times just to illustrate the global distribution of cases and how we've gone through these many waves, these surges and recessions and surges and recessions, and how they've been distributed around the world. Europe has really been at the center of a lot of these big surges. The situation is probably an awful lot worse in many poorer countries. We just don't know it because we're not testing. Those countries don't have the healthcare capacity to test the way we do. The way the shock affected the United States initially was we had big supply chain disruptions that we're still actually dealing with. These supply chain disruptions that began in 2020 are still very much a reality today, illustrating just how fragile global supply chains have been. But the good news has been that economic activity, as we've gone through these many waves of the coronavirus outbreak, each wave has been less disruptive than the wave before. In part because we figured out how to deal with this thing, in part because we now have vaccines, we have medicines, and so on. If we look at how it affected global economic activity, this is a chart showing you how global GDP has grown since 1980. This is like for the world as a whole. You can see in the chart that typically global GDP increases. Even during the global financial crisis of 2009, global economic activity basically just paused to zero. It didn't contract. And that was because China was still growing pretty dramatically while the rest of us were in a major crisis. So you see there the GDP line just drops to zero in 2008. But there you look at 2020, we see this extraordinary drop. This is absolutely without precedent, that kind of decline in global. This was a global crisis, affected economies everywhere. The United Kingdom had the worst decline in economic activity in 300 years. It was just an astonishing drop. But what we've seen since is a pretty sharp rebound and continued global growth. Now, that growth has not been evenly distributed. The World Bank put out its latest projections this week for global growth this year and next year. It's mainly the advanced economies that had a lot of scope for fiscal and monetary policies to sort of offset the shock that are growing rapidly. They'll get back to pre-crisis trends by next year. A lot of the poorer countries will not. So this crisis has in many ways worsened inequality problems that were in place prior to the crisis. That next chart just gives you details of the IMF growth outlook. I'm going to skip over that quickly and just show you how members of the FOMC are. So that was a picture for global growth. This is how the FOMC is expecting things to evolve. in the United States over the next couple of years. This is from the December survey of summary of economic projections, which was compiled from the forecasts of all the individual members of the Open Market Committee. And you see them basically expecting a pretty rapid rate of growth. Last year, I mean, that's now all in the bag pretty much. Continued strong growth this year, next year, but tapering down towards what we expected. We still think is our long-run trend growth rate of something a bit less than 2%. So a gradual easing off of growth over the next couple of years. Unemployment is likewise expected. You know, we had a big spike last year. It's coming down. Expected to come down a lot more. And then inflation. We're looking at a very different kind of picture. We see there the big increase in inflation last year at close to, I can't read the number on my slide, but it's coming in at close to 6-7%, depending on which way you measure it. That's still projected to come down to our target, but at a slow rate. We still think inflation will get to 2% over the next 2 or 3 years. And the way that's going to happen is by having a much steeper profile for interest rates in the United States than we were projecting back in September. So most analysts, most bank presidents, participants, members of the FOMC are talking now increasingly about 3-4 rate increases over the course of the coming year to rein in inflation pressures and to ensure that we don't get stuck in something like the kind of situation we found ourselves in the 1970s. So let me just step back a little bit and just try to tie some of these things back to some of these longer run secular trends that are much more important for determining where we're going to end up in 10, 15 years than, you know, the pandemic or the current inflation spike, assuming that the inflation spike is transitory. And these are things like demography, productivity growth, and globalization at a high level. And I talked about this 5 years ago, and this is still the case, and in fact it's even more the case today. We're dealing with aging populations in many, many countries, and in fact, in some advanced economies, populations are declining. The biggest and most prominent example where the population is declining is Japan. Population of Germany will be declining also were it not for immigrants. Population of Italy will be declining also. So extraordinarily low birth rates in these countries have meant that we're in a strange demographic situation where there's more and more old people. This interacted with the COVID pandemic in that COVID was much more lethal for older people than for younger people. Had we had a different demographic structure, the pandemic would have played out a little bit differently. Productivity growth is ultimately the thing that matters most for increases in living standards over time. And we at the Dallas Fed have done a series of conferences on technology-enabled disruption and its implications for monetary policy, labor markets, training, and so on. The COVID pandemic has actually accelerated many trends towards the adoption of new technologies, specifically working from home. We now realize that it's a lot easier for people to work remotely than we thought was the case 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We're more willing to trust people to work remotely and actually do the job than was the case 2 or 3 years ago. It also poses a new threat of offshoring of white-collar jobs, because if you can work from home in North Dallas, if somebody in India can do essentially the same job at half the salary, it poses a whole new threat to virtual offshoring that hasn't been really fully discussed as we come out of this pandemic. And then the third thing is globalization. Globalization, this huge surge in globalization we've seen over the past couple of decades, was driven by policy changes, technological changes, and so on. Obviously, in a less globally integrated world, an obscure respiratory disease in Wuhan, China might not have spread as quickly as it did, but obviously having the kind of linkages we have in the world we have today, it made it very, very easy for this disease to spread and spread very, very quickly. So that's sort of the downside of globalization. Globalization has been a big tailwind for inflation, and I'll show you a chart on this going forward, but it seems to have stalled out, and this may make the challenge of controlling inflation a little bit greater going forward. Let me just show you just 2 pictures on demography. This is just a picture of the share of the working age population as a share of the total population at the global level. You could make pictures like this for lots and lots of countries. The point is the working age population, those between 15 and 64, that peaked as a share of the global population back in 2014, and it's declining. and it's going to decline even faster. Working age populations are declining in most countries. China in particular, in fact, they're seeing a declining working age population, not a declining total population. That is going to make the challenges of managing the Chinese economy a lot greater. Here's another way to look at this. Again, this is at the global level. There's now more people over the age of 65 in the global population than there are under the age of 5. And these pictures look a lot worse for rich countries than they do for poorer emerging market countries. I'm going to skip over this one. This has to do with how many people actually work given a certain population, but I'll just flag the issue that some of you may be familiar with, is that during this pandemic, a lot of people dropped out of the labor force and have not come back for reasons we don't fully understand. Some of it is people retiring earlier. Some of it is people trying to manage childcare with schools closed and things like that, or take care of people in their household who are sick or so on. But there's been a pretty noticeable drop in the labor force participation rate. So even if you have people of working age, fewer of those people of working age are actually working or participating in the labor market. The second thing I wanted to talk about then is productivity growth, and this is sort of kind of a messy looking chart, but it just highlights a couple of things. What really, really matters for us, our living standards going up over time, is us becoming more productive at doing things. It's not adding more people or tables and chairs to this room to make more stuff. It's figuring out how to take the people and the tables and the chairs in this room to make more stuff. Like figuring out new ways to combine our ideas. And that's ultimately what makes societies rich. And we had a boom in productivity in the immediate post-World War II period from the late 1940s to the early 1970s. It then dropped down from the 70s through the mid-1990s. What happened in the mid-1990s is that Amazon came along, Netscape came along. We had this big IT boom, a big step up in productivity growth in the late 1990s that lasted basically through the global financial crisis, another step down, and we have not had a big uptick since then. This is not just a problem for the United States. So that chart referred to the United States. This is across the OECD. So that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is a group of about 30, 40 of the richest democracies in the world. This is a global problem. Now, one side, the techno-optimists will point to things like that we're now spending a lot more money. A lot of the investment we're doing now is on IT equipment, and that this IT is going to sort of generate all kinds of productivity gains. But it's also generating concerns that all these IT innovations will displace workers. What's interesting is that concerns about technology displacing workers go all the way back to the founding of economics as a discipline in the early 19th century. This is a quote from David Ricardo, who's one of the fathers of economics as a science, talking about how machines can displace workers and permanently render them unemployed. You can go back and find examples in literature in the 20th century of plays about the term robot was introduced in a Czech play in the 1920s about these machines that would come along and eventually take over and destroy the human race. New York Times in the 1920s running stories about how machines makes for the march of the machine making for idle hands. A great example is the ATM. Or an example to illustrate just how subtle these or difficult these issues are is to think about the example of the ATM. You think of an ATM basically should have made lots of bank tellers unemployed, right? And it does actually displace a lot of what bank tellers traditionally did until the 1970s. But what happened was, by making it cheaper to operate bank branches, yes, bank tellers no longer spent time handing out cash, but it made it cheaper to operate a bank branch, so more banks opened more branches and needed more bank tellers. So the net effect of the introduction of the ATM was actually quite ambiguous on bank teller employment, because you have two offsetting effects on employment, and that happens with a lot of technologies. There's some charts here that's just to illustrate. If you look at things like the amount of capital we have in the United States, or if you look at the amount of ideas we have in the United States, even as we accumulate more and more machines or get better and better at figuring out how to use machines and labor together, you don't see any upward trend in unemployment. And unemployment tends to go up and down with the business cycle. There has not been a trend towards more unemployment as a result of technological innovation. The big issue, and there was a great story in the New York Times last week summarizing a session at the annual meetings of the American Economic Association, talking about research that some of the leading scholars in economics are doing about the potential implications of modern technology for wage inequality. And there's an emerging consensus, it seems, among many sophisticated economists that while technology may not displace jobs, it may be contributing in a non-trivial way to the growth in inequality that we've seen over time. And arguably, half of the increase in wage inequality that we've seen over the past several decades in the United States can be attributed to technological innovations. So something worth just keeping in mind. Let me keep going. This is just a cartoon I saw that I thought was funny about how COVID was going to encourage people to embrace technology, because a lot of people pre-COVID were resistant to innovations in the way they did work, and I think they've had to adopt it in the face of work. Let me just quickly talk about globalization. This is a picture just showing you, this is one of the ways you can measure globalization, is simply the total amount of stuff that's being put on ships every year relative to the size of the global economy and being shipped across oceans and stuff. And you see that basically around the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was a big increase in the share of trade in total global economic activity. And it basically lasted until the time of the global financial crisis. We had a big trade collapse associated with the global financial crisis, something of a rebound. But what we see in that picture is a leveling off to something like what we had pre-fall of the Berlin Wall. Okay, so from fall of the Berlin Wall up to global financial crisis, growing trade, and that acted as a brake on global inflation. And in fact, if you can see that in this second slide where I showed global inflation rates, you see a big spike and then decline in global inflation rates associated with this surge in international trade. We're no longer going to have this as a tailwind in helping us control inflation going forward, because we see more and more trade conflicts between the United States and China, between the United States and Europe, and so on. So it's less likely that we're going to get this big tailwind helping, making our job easier. So let me just finally just talk about a couple of risks, and I'll wrap up and take questions if there's time. So pre-COVID, I used to routinely talk about debt, China, Europe, trade, and the black swans. Post-COVID, I mean, right now we're in this race between variants of the disease and vaccines, and I'm optimistic that this will be resolved in favor of the vaccines. Debt still matters, China still matters. The one upside risk that's worth keeping in mind is that we may see a return of the roaring 20s. And the 20s ahead of us may look something like the 20s we had in the last century, where there was a huge increase in innovation, lots of new industries created on the basis of new technologies. Back then, the technologies were the automobile, radio, new chemical industries, and so on. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that we could see. That's sort of the optimistic scenario for the coming decade. But let me just show you a pessimistic picture on the debt situation. This is a picture showing you the share of federal debt in U.S. gross domestic product going all the way back to the founding of the Republic in 1790. And you can see typically the United States ran or accumulated large levels of debt associated with wars. First the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, it's not as dramatic, then the Civil War, then World War I, then World War II. And then you see this projection period. We're now at a level of debt to GDP in the United States comparable to where we were at the end of World War II. And that's just projected to get worse going forward. That's going to make life challenging for both fiscal and monetary policymakers going forward, to put it mildly, unless we can figure out a way to either grow the economy more rapidly or to rein in spending growth. The second thing is just on this issue of how the world has changed. On the eve of the global financial crisis in 2007, more economic activity was taking place in the so-called emerging market economies than in the advanced economies of the West. And that trend has just gotten worse, if you will. That shifting of the center of global economic gravity from the North Atlantic region to Southeast Asia has just continued over the past 15 years. Okay, so the real center of global economic activity is now really Southeast Asia. And just to illustrate this, arguably, based on certain measurements, China has already overtaken the United States as the world's #1 economy. Now, these are estimates put out by the International Monetary Fund. They don't get a lot of attention for a variety of reasons, primarily because these kinds of comparisons are very, very difficult to make. When you start trying to think how big two economies are, it's actually very difficult to make accurate comparisons. The main point, though, is that China looms extraordinarily large in the global economy. And problems in China are more and more likely to have first-order implications for the rest of us than would have been the case, say, 20, 50 years ago. And so bear careful monitoring. So just to wrap up, you know, these secular trends are really, really important and important to keep in mind even in the midst of a pandemic that hopefully will be gone away in 6 months or 12 months. We still think the economy is going to grow. We're going to continue recovering. We'll get this inflation problem under control over the next 12 to 18 months. We're still not without risks. COVID remains an important risk to the economic outlook. The debt situation, getting that under control is an important challenge. The China slowdown, how they're managing this, sort of trying to take the steam out of their property market, how they manage that is going to be an important issue. And then trade and black swans. So I will wrap it up there and happily take questions if you have time. I will engage in some advertising. There's a little survey y'all can fill out if you're interested in providing feedback to our communications and outreach people. And I'll also just say we're also doing an online economic outlook. My colleague Pierre Renius will be doing an economic outlook for Texas at the beginning of February that you can find details about at the bank's website. So with that, I'll happily stop and take any questions you may have. I'll go back to the thing.
I have two questions. Does the New York division have more power than the others?
They're primus inter pares, yes. I mean, the New York Fed is important in that the president of the New York Fed has a permanent vote on the FOMC. All the other banks, oops, sorry, that was my timer. So the way the FOMC, which is this main policy-making group that's really the locus of all the important decision-making in the Federal Reserve System, the vice chair of the FOMC is always the president of the New York Fed, and he or she always gets to vote. And the main reason for that is that all of our operations are conducted through the New York Fed. In contrast, in Europe, for example, when the European system of central banks has a similar structure to ours, when the ECB makes a decision about interest rates, all of those operations are done through the national central banks. But in the United States, it's all done through New York. So New York does have a little bit more weight in the system than the rest of us.
Okay, my second question is, what pressure can you put upon the economies of Russia and China to affect their economy? I mean, can the Federal Reserve have some leeway there?
That's not really in our mandate. To the extent that the U.S. administration decided they wanted to impose sanctions or take actions again, that's a political decision. The Federal Reserve we stay out of any kind of political issue, either domestic or foreign. We have a mandate from Congress to deliver price stability, maximum sustainable employment, and moderate long-term interest rates. And that's what Congress instructs us to do, and that's what we do. And we try to deliver on that and are held accountable for that. We stay out of anything to do with trying to put pressure on foreign actors. Now, if the administration orders us to do certain things, obviously we would comply to the extent that it was consistent with our mandate. It would have to be consistent with the mandate we have from Congress, but we generally steer well clear of those kinds of things. Those are really issues for the Treasury rather than the Fed.
I'll hand it over, but I actually have a couple dozen questions, but I'll give you two juicy ones. First, regarding inflation, we're anticipating potentially getting that under control in 12 to 18 months. What happens if that is not the case and it takes longer than 12 months? What type of levers do you have? And the second one, just sort of looping back in regarding decentralization and inflation. I noticed you didn't mention anything about cryptocurrencies and decentralized currencies. Can you comment on that, please?
On controlling inflation, we still have the most powerful lever, the main lever we've always used to control inflation. That's short-term interest rates. And there's no limit. I mean, it can become challenging because people get upset when you raise interest. They get more upset when you raise interest rates than when you lower them. But that's why the Fed has a certain independent structure within government. So we have the tool we need. The question is, are we able to use it and time rate increases in such a way so as to get inflation under control and not tank the economy at the same time? And I think we do. We also have the option of running down the balance sheet, but that's a that's a tool we're still trying to figure out exactly how it feeds through to the broader economy. On the cryptocurrency thing, I mean, the Fed has groups studying this and looking at the possibility of a digital dollar. We are not at the cutting edge of innovation there. China, Sweden, other countries are far ahead of this when it comes to innovating in that space. We watch what's going on, make sure we understand it. Right now, cryptocurrency seems to us to be more of a speculative asset class than anything that could actually displace the dollar as a transactions medium, but that's not to say it could never happen. But we do pay there's a group that's based in Boston working with MIT, trying to think about this and how it feeds into the payment system. But I think that we will be a sort of a careful watcher, because you can't mess with the role of the dollar in the global economy, because we are so important, and our role, I mean, it sounds a bit self-serving to say this, but the Federal Reserve is still the world's most important central bank, and you don't want to be chasing every idea that comes along just to be first. It's better for us to observe how China, how Sweden, how other countries manage this, and then, you know, follow along as appropriate.
Thank you.
I'll take other questions. I mean, I know you all have to wrap up, so I'll hang around if you've got other questions. So thank you all very much.
Just stay for a moment. Thank you so much. You were fabulous, and I know a lot of people have questions, so I appreciate that you'll be able to stay for additional questions if you'll come up. I want to let you know that a book is being placed at your honor at McShann Elementary.
Oh, okay, cool.
And we appreciate you being here today. After the meeting, I'd like to get a picture with you in front of our PR screen.
Sure, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Another round of applause. Very informative and interesting. Some of those economic talks can really kind of be not so interesting. You did a great job. And now Jeff Brady's going to come forward. So Jeff has really been amazing. We have a great PR team. Eric Harrison, Mark Neese, Jeff Brady. Jeff has amazing press connections with TV, radio, newspaper, and so we've been working on getting additional press coverage for our collaborative partners, and so we've been working on that for Ronald McDonald House, Salvation Army, Bonton Farms, and we continue working on that. And so if you know of a story with those organizations where that's really timely, it's a unique situation, let us know, because we like to get additional PR for each of our collaborative partners. Jeff's going to come up. We have this beautiful table right here that has been in our club office for probably 22 years. And we now are in a much smaller office. We're in a really fancy office location, but our office is small. So we cannot accommodate this beautiful table. And so we would like to auction it off to you for you to enjoy in your home or your office. It's really a beautiful table. And it's been very handy for the meeting today. So, and I'll let Jeff take it away. Thanks again, Jeff, for your great work.
Thanks, Happy. There really is some late breaking news, though. I didn't know this, and you may not have known this either, but Lori Eldridge just told me that the history of this piece of furniture actually goes back quite far. And so she's found some long forgotten records that show that actually, if you go back far enough, Thomas Jefferson actually sat at this table. We're not sure what he wrote, but there was a famous Tom. Lori said she wasn't sure if it was Thomas Jefferson, might have been Tom Swift. But anyway, it's a nice piece of furniture. So we want to auction this off to the highest bidder, and it will go in a prominent place in your home, no doubt. So what are we going to start at this at? What's the quick question, Jeff. Yes, historical record.
Does it come with assistance in carrying it out?
Yes. Happy would be happy to help you with that. She brought it in, yeah. But and there are some historical documents that'll go along with it. Tom Swift has those somewhere. So let's start this at what do you say? $100? $100. We're going to start at $100 for this fine piece of furniture. Can you hear me in back? Kyle, can you hear me? Oh, good. $100. Kyle says $100. Thank you, Kyle. $100 from Kyle. He says $100. Who can give me $105? $105 for this beautiful piece of furniture. Anybody? $105. $105. Come on, right here. Central table, $105. Who can say $110? $110. Come on. You know you've got that extra cash in your pocket after Christmas. $110. Philip, anybody? 100, huh? No, a little bit, no, okay. Jeff's leaning, he's not, no, he's, no way. 110, $110. Who can say $110? Just think what you'll be able to say about this beautiful piece of furniture in your home. Scott? Huh? Oh, Tom, of course. 110 from Tom Swift. Thank you, Tom. Oh, he will sign it. Tom Swift will sign it as Thomas J. Jefferson for $110. Who say 110? Anybody say 110? 105? 105? We've got a few more minutes. 105, 110. Who's got $110? Oh, Cleve, was that a bid? Huh? Oh, you're just scratching your head. You're sure? Okay. He's thinking twice about it, though. 105, going once, going twice. I better not ring that. Everybody leave, right? 105, going once, going twice. Sold for $105. Thank you so much for your contribution. That goes into the general fund, right? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Great work. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jeff. That was really fun. Next week's program is also going to be really fabulous. We have Samantha Ellendari. She's going to talk about the Parkinson Voice Project. The program chair is Rob Levy. And now we have the four-way test. Valerie, would you come up and do the four-way test for us in Liz Landon's place? And thank you so much for joining us today. If you'll rise.
Everybody, is this on? Okay. Everybody join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is fair to all concerned. Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned. That's the best part.
Well, don't you? I love all the red. That's very nice and festive.
Well, did you get unloaded?
I did. I just need to get planted either today or tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Do you think it has to be today?
I'm sorry?
Do you think it has to be today? Can it be tomorrow?
No.
Okay.